Well, hey everybody, welcome to a very special live stream. We are here with the Kansas City Royals, MJ Melendez. MJ, welcome. Thank you for being here. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Awesome, my pleasure. So we're going to have some fun today. MJ, I don't know if you've ever heard of the game Out of the Park Baseball, but that's the game we're on the live stream, the Twitch channel for Out of the Park development. So basically, we're all a bunch of huge baseball fans, right? Probably a little too nerdy, for your average baseball fan. But we're just excited to talk to you today. It's a lot of fun to talk to the guys who are, major league ball players, and especially someone like yourself who is, early in your career. So I kind of wanted to start with like today, right now, right? As we're talking to you, it's 1 o'clock Eastern on October 11th, 2023. You've just recently wrapped up, I think, your first full major league season. It was your second total major league season, but I believe it was
Right.
your first full 162 game season. You played in most of the games, I think 148. Um, it's a long season. It's a grind. You played a lot of positions. Um, what's your relationship with baseball right now? Like, are you watching all the playoff games? Are you in a no baseball zone? Like, where are you right now in relationship with Major League Baseball today?
Yeah. So obviously, I do wish I was still playing. Everybody wants to be playing in October. It's why you play the game. You play to win championships. And uh, obviously, I really wish we were playing right now. At the same time, it's nice to give the body a little bit of a rest. I am still keeping up with the games going on. It's pretty cool to see. Definitely some shocks, and how the games have been going for sure, especially the early ones. But also, you see, great players, people that are stepping up in big situations, and kind of you want to be in that situation someday, and hopefully be able to play a lot of postseason baseball, soon in my career.
It's interesting. You brought it up some surprises. I know you haven't yet had the opportunity to play in the playoffs, but there's a lot of conversations these days about the effect of the 1 week layoff for the top teams. You play the game, so you have a feel for it, right? Like, do you feel like it's an advantage or a disadvantage for those top seeds to have that 5 or 6 days off, right? Like, obviously, I would think that getting the chance to rest again after that 162 game season is good, but is there validity to, like, is that too long of a layoff and the timing gets off? I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah, I would think so, honestly. So the way I see it is, obviously we all have our off days, and sometimes it feels a little weird after an off day. Most of the times you're traveling, right before or right after, sometimes during an off day. So that can definitely, affect the timing a little bit. I can't even imagine a week. I think for me, what has felt like a long time is when, say, I'm not playing, like we have a day game on Sunday, for example. I don't play that game. Then Monday we have an off day. So that's 2 days off for me. And then we play on Tuesday. That Tuesday for me feels like I haven't seen a pitch in a week. So I can't even imagine an actual week of not seeing. And I feel like that could definitely, have some effects, negatively for the hitters.
You play a number of positions. Catcher is, and I don't want to use the term incorrectly, but I sort of feel like catcher is your natural position or your original position. Um, and catchers almost always make the best managers in baseball, right? Many successful managers were catchers. And I'm curious, when you're watching a game, either when you're, like you said, like it's a Sunday, Sunday day game and you're off, or if you're watching a game on TV, are you sort of, I'm curious how you watch the games. Are you thinking like a manager and a tactician and you're like, oh, I would do this here, or I would move the infield in, or I would pinch hit here? Are you watching the games almost like a player where you're like, oh, if I was at bat in this situation, here's how I would approach it? or do you watch it almost as a fan because you come from a baseball family, you grew up with baseball as well as many sports. Do you sort of find yourself gravitating towards one type of perspective, or is it sort of all inclusive? How do you approach it when you're watching?
I would say probably more like a player than anything. Just putting myself in, the player's shoes. Whenever, hitter's up in a certain situation, like, okay, what would I try to do? What would I look for? And then see how the pitcher is pitching them to see, how my plan of attack would have lined up with how they're pitching. And yeah, I would say it's probably it's harder to watch it like as a fan because you're always thinking like, man, I could be there right now. It's very it's very possible to be there in that situation. So it's kind of hard to watch as a fan. And as kind of managing how you talk about, I feel like the only thing that you think about as a player like me in this instance when I'm watching the game is like, okay, like pitching. Maybe how long would you let this guy go? Would you take him out? That would be like the only managing part of it that I would really even think about when I'm watching these games.
Do you, baseball has changed so much in the last 10 years, much less 15, 20, 25 years. Do you find yourself, sort of feeling like when you're watching games or playing the games like that, pitchers are taken out too early? They have too short of a leash right now? Or do you feel like with the quality of pitching, right, the number of arms, the speed that pitchers are thrown these days, it's actually, the game is different. Pitchers have shorter leashes more often than not for a reason, and it's actually, a good thing. I'm curious your perspective on that.
Yeah, so I think as a player, it's tough because the pitchers, like you're saying, they're getting taken out earlier, so it's less time for you to see them. Therefore, it is harder to get prepped for a reliever. So I think as long as the reliever come in there and do their job, it's probably more effective, I think, to have a reliever come in, especially because you think about it, you're game planning the whole day for the starter. You see him once or twice, usually like twice, maybe three times. And it's like, well, now I gotta, right before I go to hit, I have to study this whole new pitcher that's coming in, who I may or may not even see. Say I'm hitting fourth or fifth. I don't know if I'm going to see him. He's probably only going to go one inning. He might not even go two innings. So, what are the chances I even see him? So I get my full report just in case because, rather be on the safe side than, say you're up fifth. The guy comes in, runner gets on base, you're on deck, you're ready to go. Guy gets out. So it's three outs, whatever. You go back out in the field, you come back in, another reliever's up, and you're first up to hit. So now it's like, okay, I have to know, all little things, what it is every guy, kind of has their little things that they look for. And obviously there's so many different analytics these days. So, you have so many options of what to look for, release height, the vertical break, everything. So you look at all that, but not only for one pitch. Say its reliever has four different pitches and he uses them all evenly. So now you're trying to cram all that in, a minute, 45 seconds before you have to go up there, get all your stuff on, your batting gloves, all that stuff, elbow guards, whatnot, and then go up there on deck and try to time them up in person. So that's where I feel like it's tough, for hitters whenever they're bringing in a bunch of relievers in, and especially team with some pretty high end relievers.
You mentioned analytics, I'm very interested to hear your take on this. Obviously, fans like me, we love statistics, we love analytics, we love numbers, we love to slice and dice things so that we can sort of tell ourselves the story of what's going on in whatever way that we want to tell the story. But as a ball player and as a major league ball player, you both have access to and are presented with, I would imagine, an extraordinary amount of data. Yet, you're at the plate trying to hit, right? It's a very physical activity, right? It's just about, seeing it and measuring it. Do I swing or not? Like, have you found a comfort zone with the amount of data that you want to have about a pitcher in a situation versus to put yourself in a point where, okay, this is what I want to know. I don't want to know more. I don't want to know less. Like, have you found that right area so that when you're at the plate, you're still utilizing your best skills, which is your ability to hit and not sort of overthinking it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I definitely, that's a great question. I definitely think there's times where I do overthink it and there's times where I don't. And what I notice is what works best for me is, okay, getting a general idea of what this, pitch or pitcher looks like, via the analytics. I've seen this type of fastball, for example, this type of changeup before, and making a plan on it. And then instead of thinking, more numbers wise, it's okay, this is what that ball's going to do. Let me make sure, say it's a guy who's got extremely good vert. So the ball's going to kind of like feel like it's rising. So instead of me thinking, oh, like this guy has, 21 inches or 22 inches of vertical break, I'm going to think, hey, like this guy's fastball is really good. It's going to rise. Let me get on top of it and, hit it way out front. Try to hit a line drive to the second baseman's head. So things like that usually work better for me than thinking of like actual numbers. Because sometimes you think the actual numbers, you start to overthink, like you're saying, and kind of get in your own head. But it definitely happens sometimes. You just got to try to switch your mind back and not let that linger on too long.
So you didn't catch as much this year as you have in the past, but you still have caught. You are a catcher. You've caught in the major leagues. Is there a different level of analytics that you like to have and like to know when you're behind the plate, both with the pitcher that you're catching as well as the batter? Because when you're a catcher, you've got a lot of responsibilities. Is that, have you also found that sort of right level of, okay, this is the data I want to know, but not more than that when you're behind the plate?
Yeah, I think when you're behind the plate, you want to know what your pitcher's pitches do. How the hitter is viewing them, and then obviously knowing the strengths and weaknesses of the hitter as well. So it's kind of it plays in everything. Obviously, their strengths and weaknesses, and their analytical data that you get a little report on as well before the games. And most catchers have a card to kind of go along with it. So those things are probably the most important analytical pieces of data. But at the same time, I've caught my whole life, so whenever I am behind the plate and I'm seeing the hitter, I'm kind of reading their swings as they're going on with the bat. You can kind of tell their timing when they're sitting on pitches and whatnot.
So you have played for 2 years in the major leagues with the Kansas City Royals. This year you played a lot more outfield than you did catcher. Last year you played, I think, a pretty even split of catcher and outfield. Do you prefer to catch? Do you prefer to be in the outfield? I would imagine there's pros and cons, for lack of a better word. But like, if you had a preference, would you rather be behind the plate, or would you rather be in the outfield, or at first base, where you played at least once this past year?
Yeah. I'm gonna give you like what's gonna seem like the politically correct answer, but it's honestly just my honest answer, which is, just being in the lineup. So
Mm-hmm.
wherever it is, I'm in the lineup. Obviously as a competitor growing up, what you want to do is play in the major leagues. You want to be wherever it is that you're needed. So that's what it is for me, genuinely. And you know, want to be in the lineup, help the team win as best as I can. And yeah, I love all the positions. Just being out in that field every day is a blessing, and wouldn't have it any other way.
I 100% get that. Um, you come from a baseball family. Your father was in the game. Your brother is in the game. Um, I believe you played baseball from a very young age as well as other sports. At what point did you go from aspirational of, man, I'd love to play in the major leagues one day, to sort of know that that was the path that you really wanted to take and you knew you wanted to be a Major League Baseball player?
Yeah, so I would say, obviously, like you said, play baseball my whole entire life. I think for me, it was always in the back of my head, when you're in elementary school and, you're filling out these things and the teacher asks you, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? And for me, it was always a Major League Baseball player. Like, I never really had a backup option. Nothing ever for me, seemed realistic like being a Major League Baseball player. So I would say mentally and emotionally, like in my head, I was always going to be a Major League Baseball player. That's just what I had set out to do. the brain is a powerful thing. So you kind of tell yourself that, and that's something that I'm learning. I'm trying to get better at, and watch a lot of videos of people kind of talking about like manifestation and stuff, and I feel like I didn't even know that at such a young age, and I just really believed that like it was more impossible that I wasn't going to be a Major League Baseball player than it was that I was. If that makes sense. I don't know if I
Yeah.
said that right, but basically, I felt like it was impossible for me not to make it to the major leagues. So that was always kind of my thing growing up. I feel like physically, I felt like I was, could make that jump probably like my sophomore, junior year in high school was, when I started putting on a little bit more muscle.
Right.
So physically, I would say probably around that age. And, like I said, mentally, probably like my whole life, honestly.
So you are a high draft pick, second round draft pick. Draft picks, through history, there are picks who make it. There are picks who don't make it. You've obviously made it and are a key part of a young up and coming Royals franchise. What was your? Do you remember? I'm sure you remember. Dumb question, but like, what do you remember from when you made your professional debut? Right in the minor leagues. Do where was it? What team was it? What position were you playing? What do you when you think back to that moment? What do you remember most about that?
Yeah, so I was playing in the Arizona League. The AZL used to be called, I don't think it's called that anymore. I think it's called something else. Maybe it is still called that. I don't know.
I think it's the
But the
AFL now, right?
AZL,
AFL, I think, is
yeah,
now
it's
what it
like
is. Yeah.
something, I don't know. It's something weird. But yeah, so the AZL, that was like probably like 2.5 weeks after the draft, maybe. So draft happened. I was out of here in, I would say, around 4 days. Flew out to Arizona, was able to sign out there, and started working right away. And then that league started, and I was catching and DHing. And I don't know if it might have been my first at bat. I hit a triple towards right field line, so that was pretty cool to kind of get the first hit out of the way.
Yeah.
Was able to keep the ball and whatnot. Definitely. I think about it now. It feels like so long ago, 2017. It feels like, I mean, like decades ago, and it really wasn't.
Well, the pandemic will do that to you too, right? So, and
That's
speaking
true.
speaking of the pandemic, so that happened, right? So you made your pro debut in 2017. You made your major league debut in 2022. We'll get to that in a little bit. But in between, the pandemic, which just threw everybody for a loop. Like, how did you handle that, and what were you doing during that time? Because I would imagine, there was, well, now I know there was a lot of uncertainty about, okay, well, how do I maintain, my skills? How do I keep progressing? Because when baseball comes back, I need to be ready. Like, what did you do? And where were you during the time of the shutdown prior to when baseball reopened later in 2020?
Yeah, so at the beginning of the quarantine, I was down here in Miami, with my family. Uh, at the time, my dad was still coaching at FIU, so they had a facility, indoor facility there. So I was able to use that pretty much every day and was able to stay sharp. Never knowing, at first, when quarantine started, I thought we all thought it was going to be like 2 weeks,
Right. Yeah.
maybe three max.
Right.
And so just trying to stay sharp every single day, ready for, the call to head back to Arizona. But obviously, we all know it didn't end up being like that. It ended up being a lot longer. And fortunately enough, for me, I was able to be a part of the, what they call the alternate site.
Hmm.
And was able to, right when everybody reported back, was able to go to Kansas City, do scrimmages and practice with the big league team. And then, once their season started, reverted to the alternate site and was able to do our scrimmages there and whatnot.
So, when and how did you find out that you had been called up to the major leagues in May of 2022?
Yeah, so I remember 2022. I'll kind of start from spring training just to
Yeah.
kind of give you like my whole mindset of everything. So I had come off a good year in 2021. I'd hit 41 home runs. Was feeling, really good. Wanted to bring that into spring training the next year. So spring training starts. Having a really good spring. seeing the ball well, hitting the ball well. Defensively, felt like I was, where I needed to be, and thought I had a pretty good chance of making the team. Obviously, that didn't end up happening out of spring. I didn't end up making the team, and was definitely a little bit frustrated. Definitely kind of down on myself, and going in once I realized that, I feel like I kind of tried to do too much in AAA. Got myself in a little bit of a slump, just trying to press situation, trying to be like, oh yeah, I should be up there, and I ended up pressing, not really just being myself. And we had a day game at home in Omaha on, I want to say it was like a Tuesday or a Wednesday maybe. And I was like, all right, I'm going to try something else. I'm just going to try to relax. Be myself. I ended up um, hitting a double, and I was DHing that day. And my buddy comes up after me, hits a line drive to right field, runners on third as well, and I end up tagging going to third. He goes to third instead of going home, and I get out. So I'm just sitting there on the bench, whatever, just like as the innings over, taking off my helmet and whatnot. And the manager comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, obviously you got to make a better base running adjustment right there. Like hey, that's we just got to be better." And I was like, "Oh, that's kind of weird." Like I know I messed up. Like usually he wouldn't have really harped on it so much. He would just kind of let me be and talk to me about it after the game or something. And he was like, listen, this is not the way I was imagining to do this. And you're gonna be a major leaguer though. So something happened. We need to get you out of here right away. So go upstairs, get all your stuff packed up, and you have a flight at 5 o'clock. And I was like, oh, okay, well that's a quick turnaround. It was like 12:30 at the time, one. So I literally, and they were like, yeah, like you don't even have to pack your apartment. Like we'll have somebody do it for you, whatever. I was like, nah. I'm like, so I got to do like everything my way, whatever. So I hurry up, I pack up my whole apartment in literally like an hour, hour and a half. Pack up my whole car, drove my cars to the airport. Yeah, long story short, I ended up flying out to St. Louis, and they ended up getting my car to me. One of the coaches drove my car up to Kansas City for me. So yeah, it was a pretty crazy day to say the least.
So then let's talk about your major league debut. What do you remember about your first major league at bat?
Yeah, so definitely an extremely memorable moment. DHing at home, Kaufman against rival St. Louis Cardinals,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember going up there expecting to be like super nervous, super like shaky, wobbly legs, and I just wasn't. So it was like a kind of like a pleasant surprise. It just felt like, you know, it felt like I was meant to be there in that moment. And that's, that point in time, that first about is like, okay, like I know I was born to be a Major League Baseball player, because I never felt like the uneasiness, the nerves. And I was like, okay, like I'm meant to be here. I'm ready for this stage. And it was definitely crazy at bat. I ended up grounding out the first, but nonetheless, it was still an extremely memorable moment. And I just remember too, like being able to see the ball so much clearer there in Kauffman Stadium than in Omaha.
Major league lighting, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Nice. Um, that Royals team, the Royals team, you're on right now, has some big time stars, right? Like Salvador Perez, I think probably a Hall of Famer, certainly a Hall of Fame candidate. Also happens to be a catcher, your position. Had you had any opportunities to meet him prior to going to Kansas City? What were your thoughts about sort of being on the same roster with a legend in Kansas City, someone like Salvi Perez?
So me and Salvi had actually, I think it was already, I don't know if it was one or two off seasons that we had been training together.
Okay.
So we were training together down here in Miami, doing a bunch of catching stuff, also doing some hitting stuff. So we had already built that relationship, which for me definitely made it easier once I came up. And looking back on it now, obviously, he was, which he still does, was mentoring me and whatnot. And I saw him as, pretty much just like a mentor. And now, looking back on it, he is still that mentor to me. But now also I see him as like a really close teammate, a really good friend. Me and him are able to have conversations about anything. And I always go to him asking for advice, on and off the field. He's been amazing to me. So I love Salvi.
So you also had another incredible career milestone, especially for somebody so young. You were on the Team Puerto Rico in the World Baseball Classic. First of all, when did you start to get an inkling that that might happen? Then how did you find out that you were going to be on that team, a star laden team? I talk about future Hall of Famers all over the place, including managing at another all time great Hall of Fame catcher, Yadier Molina.
Oh man, yeah, that was brought up to me like halfway through uh the 2022 season, and I was like, oh man, that would be incredible. I just really hope. I was like, hopefully I can, keep playing well and they can, see me and want me on the team. That would be amazing. Uh, and I think it was later in that season, toward the end of the season, they told me, hey, you're going to be on the team. So I was just extremely pumped. It still like didn't feel real. I was like, all right, yeah, like I'm on the team, but like that's still so like long away from now, anything can happen, whatever. So, long story short, I went to Puerto Rico in November or December. I don't even remember. And was able to be there with some of the guys. There was like a charity golf event, and was able to meet a lot of the people behind the scenes of making the team, general manager and all that. And that's when it started to feel real. And I was like, okay, like I am a part of this. Like this is going to be exciting. And that was, one of the best experiences of my life, for sure.
I'm sure there's dozens of them, but is there a particular moment, either in a game or with the team, that sort of stands out to you from the World Baseball Classic?
Yeah, there's two for sure. So the first one was before the first game. I'm getting goosebumps, talking about it. Before the first game, Lindor had basically put together a video and had like a video put together of, it was kind of panned around Puerto Rico, different parts. And it had like kids talking, some teenagers, adults talking, basically like wishing us all luck while there was a song in the background. That song um, was just like super touching. Basically talks about a lot about, growing up in Puerto Rico, like the different parts of small things that make you Puerto Rican. And for me, even though I have never lived there, it was just like super touching to me. Like I got teary eyed, like literally like pretty much started crying before the first game even happened. And I went up to him afterwards. I was like, dude, that was incredible. Like I'm ready to go. Like let's go, let's go do this thing. And I told him, I was like, after the game, I was like, bro, that made me cry. Look, he's like, dude, I was crying too. I had to hold it. I was like, yeah, that was definitely something I will never ever forget. And then the second one was running out to the field. We were the home team the first game, so running out to right field before the first, going out there to start the game, and I just same thing, got goosebumps. You know, everybody, stadium was super loud. Everybody just cheering us on, just looking around the stadium and seeing everybody cheer me on. It was unbelievable.
I love it. We have a few Royals fans in the chat, so before we let you get out, I'm going to ask you a couple more questions from the chat, if that's okay with you.
Perfect.
Awesome. All right. So our friend I rock this, who is a big Royals fan, lives in Kansas City, is curious what happened in the second half that saw your batting success really surge this past year.
Yeah, I was able to make a couple physical adjustments. I think one thing that a lot of people had noticed, and I saw on Twitter, was kind of how my hands were a little bit further from my body, just kind of allowing me to, keep a little bit of distance there and, stay through the ball a little bit better. So really a lot of it was, trying to stay through the ball, trying to hit the ball more out front and not cutting off my swing and not over rotating.
It sounds easy when you say it, but it's probably really, really hard to actually make that happen.
Yes, it definitely is, especially when your body is so used to, the muscle memory of doing something different.
Right.
And, when you're up there at the plate, the last thing you're able to think about is mechanics.
Right.
Because you have 100 miles an hour coming at you. You don't have any time to think about mechanics, or else you're going to be swinging when the catcher's throwing the ball back to the pitcher.
Man, I tell you, every time I go to a batting cage, I just marvel at how you guys can even just do it. It's just amazing. Amazing. Another question from Figosaurus. He says, is there one city that you look forward to visiting each season? And now you get, I mean, obviously you've been playing for 2 years, so the new schedule is really almost just the schedule to you. But
for sure.
But you do get to go to a lot more cities now than you would have 5, 10, 15 years ago, for sure. Is there one city you particularly like visiting when you're on the road?
Well, this year was my first year in Toronto. I really like Toronto. And I would say there's a lot, but I loved Houston and Boston as well.
Fenway Park is my favorite ballpark to go to.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I love that.
And then the thing is too, a little like something on top of that is usually, as players, you like going to the cities where you play the best against that team or in that city. And for me, Fenway is one of those for sure.
Yeah. So last question for you. Again, you're a baseball guy. You grew up or in and around the game. So is there a particular pitcher that you've faced or a pitcher that you've caught that you sort of were excited to, or were always looking forward to facing a particular pitcher? Not necessarily because, for any reason other than like, man, this is a guy who I've always liked or always respected or always been interested in. Is there anyone you were particularly excited to either face or catch when you got to the majors?
So to catch was definitely Zach Greinke, another future Hall of Famer.
Absolutely.
And he's extremely smart. Like that dude is, he just impresses everybody. He goes sometimes before a game, he's able to, pretty much make up a new pitch that he doesn't normally throw and be able to throw it in the game like less than a week. So you'll probably never see another person that is able to do that. If you do, like, it's probably going to be another Hall of Famer.
Right.
And to face, I would say probably Ohtani, just because, he's a freak.
Right.
He's, one of the best to ever play this game. And he's, pretty much still just early in his career.
Yeah.
And, every time we face him, he's usually going really good. And I'm like, all right, I think, we can be the ones that kind of get him out of that. And, we can put a bunch of runs on him and, hopefully hit a double in the gap, home run or something. And yeah, it just hasn't happened so far. So hopefully next time I'm able to face him. It's looking like 2025, but he's an incredible talent. So definitely wishing him speedy recovery and health in these next couple seasons.
Love it. MJ Melendez, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. This has been a delight. Hopefully we can do this again next year. And best wishes to you. Have a great off season, and we're looking forward to watching you just keep hitting those bombs all year long next year. Thanks so much for being here, and best of luck in the future. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
You got it. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We appreciate it. Hope you're enjoying these. I know I am. And we thank you all for watching and for being a part of the Out of the Park baseball community. We appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Cheers.